Today we're going to install Eclipse. Eclipse is an IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. These tools are extremely helpful to create programs because they allow you to catch your syntax errors, do debugging. They provide a lot of really nice tools. Eclipse is one of the industry standards. It was actually created originally by IBM, but it's now open source and everybody can download it for free. And so a lot of people use it for editing, which is one of the reasons we're using it for this class. Again, the video today assumes that you're running Windows. It also assumes that you have already installed Python. If you have not installed Python, please go back and watch that video first. For Eclipse, out on the website, I'm again at the main Canvas page for our class, and you'll notice there's a link for Eclipse. If you click on that, it'll give you the opportunity to download it. The nice thing here is that Eclipse provides one file, whether you're running 32-bit or 64-bit Windows, so it doesn't really matter which one you download. In this case, we're going to download the one from the Canvas site. So we'll say OK. Now I have already downloaded it, so let's take a look at the file. Go. This is the version that's actually downloading, and since I have already downloaded it, we're just going to let that go ahead and continue. Eclipse is a zipped file, and so we're going to need to unzip it. On my system, I have actually WinZip installed, but you can also use the utility that's built into Windows that says extract all. And this should actually work. Let's try that again. Okay. Fortunately, I've already downloaded another version. Always have a plan B, so let's go ahead and extract all. And this will give you the opportunity to, all you have to do is hit extract. It will create a folder and actually go through the extraction process. I'm going to come back as soon as that's done. Okay, and now I'm back. This is finishing up its unzip process, and now that it has unzipped, you should see a folder, standard folder. Now this may be in just simply in your downloads folder now. I went down a level, but you should see a folder called Eclipse. Now you'll notice that this has a standard looking folder on it, while this one has a little zipper on it. You do not want to open up the zippered one, but you can open up just the standard one with the folder. If you open that up, you'll see another folder called Eclipse. Eclipse is a really strange install in that it kind of goes back to the old days when I was in college, in the sense that we didn't have to go through an install procedure to actually install software. Instead, you just ran it. That's the way Eclipse is. But we want to keep everything ordered in our computer. We don't want things all over the place. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here, right click, and say copy. The way to install Eclipse is simply you have to drop it into the programs file. Very simple. There's no install process. So I'm going to scroll down here to my C drive, and you'll notice again we have the program files and the two program files folders. If you're running 32-bit Windows, you will only see one program files folder. If you're running the 32-bit version of Windows, you're going to want to go into the single program files folder. If you're running 64-bit Windows, you want to follow what I'm doing because I'm running 64-bit. Okay? We're going to go into the program files folder and then simply right click and paste. And it will give you an administrative because you're in the programs file area. Just say continue, and it should copy. Now, what do you do if you can't get in, if you're not an administrator on your machine? Well, the great thing about Eclipse is that you can run it from anywhere. So you could actually keep it in the downloads folder and run it from there. I personally like just to keep everything organized on my machine, so I'm going to drop it in there. Now, once you get that done, you want to be able to run this easily. And the problem is, of course, is that you don't want to be going into this folder every time you want to run it. Windows, of course, provides what are called shortcuts for that. So the easiest thing to do, I'm going to get rid of some of these folders here. You could move this out of the way, and so that you see your background screen. If you click on the executable, which is the one with the nice little icon there, click and drag it, and you could say, I'm dragging now with my right mouse, and it'll say create a shortcut. You can now run Eclipse right from the shortcut. You can also, of course, drag it to your toolbar and run it directly from the toolbar, which is typically what I do. Once you have that finished, then you're going to want to start up Eclipse. And double click. And now I have a reminder coming up, so I'll put that to the side. That's independent of this. Now you need to set up a location for your workspace. This is very important because you're going to be using the same location every time this year. So you want to keep it in a good location. I use Dropbox, so my location is going to be different than yours. I would suggest doing it off of your Documents folder, using Windows Explorer, creating a folder called Workspace, and just using that. If you want to use it in a folder called MISY 350, that would be fine as well. But just remember where it is. Once you have it done, then you're going to want to click this button here, because this window then will never come up and it'll automatically go to that location from now on. So I'm going to let you browse on your machine to take care of this. I'm going to be using my location, which will differ from yours. Now that we have Eclipse started up and you have your workspace declared, we need to do two more things. First of all, we need to install a perspective for Python, and that's called from Pydev. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to install the perspective, and that allows us to work in Python. The second step is going to be just to configure Eclipse so that it knows where the Python compiler is. So the first step is to go to the Help menu. We're going to install the Pydev perspective. Go to Install New Software. Eclipse is a very modular system. You can install all kinds of different perspectives depending on the language, and this makes it very, very powerful and very flexible. So I'm going to say Install New Software. And from here, let me just bring this down a little bit so you can see this a little easier. There we go. And we want to type in HTTP. Actually, it's right there. You can see it. I've done this before. And you can see this is what you really want to type in. You don't have to type in all this up here. You just want to type in the location of Pydev, pydev.org/updates. And once you do that, accept that, and you will see two options. You'll see Pydev and what's called Pydev Myelin. Now we're not going to be using Pydev Myelin, that's a project management tool, but you can click this to select Pydev, and then toward the bottom here you want to just accept the options, the default options, and say next. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you have Pydev selected. I can't quite fit everything on the screen here, and then you want to click next. It'll go through and do the installation of the Pydev perspective. Of course, you want to choose this again, just say next, accept the terms, and say finish. It will ask you about trusting certificates at some point. And when it asks you for these certificates, just say yes, say OK. And then it'll go through and finish up. Now it will ask to restart Eclipse, and just say yes. Okay, now we're back. Python is restarted. We have the Pydev perspective installed. You can see this up here now. It's a new menu item. You can actually see the perspective by saying Open Perspective and then say Other and choose Pydev. All right, and once we have a project, you'll actually see that Pydev Pydev perspective. For now, it doesn't look much different. The next thing we need to do, though, is actually set up the preferences to let Eclipse know where the Python compiler is located. So we're going to go to Window, Preferences, and if you scroll down, this box expands pretty quickly, so I'm going to pull this out a little bit and expand this, move this over so you can see, and you'll see Pydev, and one of the things that it does list under Pydev is a Python interpreter. Now I already have this installed because I've run this before. I'm going to go ahead and remove it. You won't need to do that because yours will probably be blank. We just need to install a Python interpreter, so we're going to say New, and then you want to say Python under interpreter name, Python 2.7.5, and then the interpreter executable, go to Browse, and then you want to go to, I'm already there, but let me walk you there. Go to C, and if you follow the installation instructions in the earlier video, go to Program Files, x86, and then scroll down to Python, and then finally Python. Now choose Python here. Do not choose Python W. Choose Python, and then say Open. And if you do that, it will actually go through the process, say OK, and it will go through, and you can configure this. Now there might be one, yeah. One of the things is there's a little button called Apply here. You do want to hit that Apply button because it will actually set up the Python path and some of the other settings, and then say OK. All right. Now we should be good. Let's just see if this perspective changes any. Probably won't, but let me try it. No, not yet. But let's create a new Python project. So we're going to say new file new Pydev project. Pydev is the development environment for Python, so you're going to see that a lot this semester. And in this window, let's just call it Python 1. You want to make sure that the project type is Python, the grammar version is 2.7, and the interpreter is the default, which we just set up. And then say Next. All these can be kept to the default. You don't want to use any of these. This is from my system. And then say Finish. All right, so now let's actually go and reset the perspective. And there we go. So now we have this project called Python 1. What we need to do now is create a Python file. So if you right-click on Python 1, which is the project folder, say New File. And let's call this test.py. py is the extension for Python files. You are always going to want to use this on any Python file. Test.py. .py is the extension. That's very important. Say Finish. All right. Now let's try something very simple. A equals 15. Print. And you'll notice, by the way, as you type, Eclipse is figuring out what you want to type. You can actually accept what they're listing by hitting Return. It will accept the print. A. And you'll notice that Python now actually or Eclipse is trying to complete this for you. Sometimes this gets annoying because it'll types in the wrong thing. You just simply have to backspace and correct it. Now let's test and see if it's going to run. We should obviously print out the number 15. So there's a little green arrow here. Let's click that arrow. It'll say, do you want to run this as a unit test or just run it as a Python file? I think this class we're going to exclusively be using just Python run, so just choose that. and say OK. And then down below you see the console window at the bottom, and you'll notice it printed out 15, which is good. Let's try something a little bit different. Let's try a for loop. So we're going to say for I in x range 1, 5. Now this is a simple for loop in Python, and it's going to generate the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice the colon at the end. If you're following along, that is required. And when you hit return, Python will automatically do the indent for you, which is also necessary. And let's say print I, comma, I times I, comma, I times I times I. Right? So that means we're going to get and you notice it tried to complete the I for me there. I just backspaced. And so we'll get the square and the cube of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if this runs correctly. So let's go ahead and say run. And you'll notice I'm going to expand this console up a little bit so you can see. And you'll notice that it goes from 1 through 4, which is what it actually should do. And it printed the squares and cubes. Also, Python and the Eclipse will set up some nice, it will do some debugging for you. If you forget to put the colon at the end and then run, it will actually tell you. It'll say error, invalid syntax, and you notice it tells you approximately anyway where the error is located. So hopefully that helped. If you've got all that, you have Python and Eclipse installed for the class, and you should be all set to go.